You see, one of the peculiar things about being human today is that we all seem to live two lives at once. There is the life we act out in the daylight, the marketplace life, full of duties, bills, screens, and deadlines. And then there is that other life, the inner life, the secret one, which looks out at all this hustle and bustle and whispers, surely there must be more than this. And yet, we pretend that the first one is real and the second is fantasy. We call the office reality and our moments of stillness escapism. We measure our worth in currencies that vanish like smoke, and then wonder why we feel so poor in spirit. But look carefully, and you will notice something rather strange, that both lives are happening simultaneously. You are the busy creature at the desk, typing away to feed your family, to build your reputation, to keep the great social machine running, and at the same time, you are the silent witness behind the eyes, watching the whole show unfold, wondering why the actor on stage takes the play so terribly seriously. We are, in a sense, like children who built an elaborate sandcastle and then forgot it was a game. We quarrel about whose castle is higher, whose moat is deeper, whose walls are safest while the tide creeps ever closer. And we call this maturity. Now, I am not saying that the marketplace is wrong or evil. Oh, no. It is a marvelous performance, a divine theater. The trouble arises when we confuse the costume for the soul, when we mistake the part for the player. For modern man has learned to speak the language of the market so fluently that he has forgotten his mother tongue, the language of being. We speak of making a living, but rarely of being alive. We speak of growth, but usually mean profit, not wisdom. We race to be ahead of others, forgetting that the whole purpose of the dance was never to win but to dance. And so, in our strange double life, we labor by day as if eternity depended on our to-do lists, and we dream by night of freedom, of simplicity, of some lost garden where we can finally rest. We oscillate, now the merchant, now the mystic, now the player, now the pawn, unable to see that these are not opposites at all, but phases of the same eternal rhythm. You might say the modern man has one foot in heaven and the other stuck in a traffic jam. He meditates on Sundays and checks his stocks on Mondays, praying for peace while chasing productivity. And all the while, he senses a quiet absurdity at the heart of the whole enterprise, a cosmic grin behind the curtain. For deep down, something in him already knows. The actor and the audience are one. The stage is made of light, the applause of silence. And when he stops pretending that the show must mean something, he begins, for the first time, to enjoy it. So this, then, is the predicament of our times, the double vision of the modern soul. One eye on eternity, the other on the clock. One hand pointing toward the infinite, the other swiping a credit card. And until we learn to see that both belong to the same dance, the mystic's breath and the merchant's bargain, we will continue to feel divided, lonely, and a little mad. But when you see through the game, not to reject it, but to play it consciously, the two worlds begin to merge. The marketplace becomes a temple, and every transaction a kind of prayer. You bow to the divine in your customer, your boss, your banker, and in doing so, you remember who you really are. And perhaps that is the beginning of wisdom in this peculiar age, to remember that beneath the suit, the schedule, the social mask, you are still that original being, the one who laughs, who dances, who dreams the world into being. Now, let's take a closer look at this grand performance we call society. It is, in essence, a game, an extraordinarily complicated and beautifully absurd game. But most people don't know they're playing. They take it so dreadfully seriously, as if the entire cosmos depended on their punctuality, their reputation, and their LinkedIn profile. Society, you see, is a magnificent masquerade. We all put on our masks at breakfast. There's the professional mask, the polite mask, the efficient mask, and perhaps a rebellious one we wear when the others grow dull. We play our parts according to the rules, the invisible etiquette that tells us when to speak, how to smile, how to behave in public, and the rules are always changing, though everyone insists that they are permanent. But if you look very carefully, you will discover that these rules, these codes of conduct, these social hierarchies are all agreed upon fictions. They work only because we all pretend together. Money, for example, is one of the cleverest inventions of pretend. It has no value whatsoever, a handful of numbers, a piece of paper, a flicker on a screen, and yet entire nations rise and fall by its mood. Because, you see, we agreed to dream the same dream. Now, that would be perfectly fine if we remembered that it's a game like poker, or chess, or football. The problem is that somewhere along the line we began to mistake the scoreboard for the play itself. We began to believe that success, status, and possessions were real achievements rather than props in the drama. And so we suffer, not because the game is cruel, but because we forget that it is a game. Imagine a group of children playing pirates on a summer afternoon. They shout, they argue, they fight duels with sticks, but all in good fun. And then one of them, the clever one, begins to take it literally. He insists he really is a pirate. He starts stealing the other's toys and locking them in the shed. Suddenly, the laughter dies. The magic collapses. The game has turned into a war. That, my friends, is what we have done with society. We have mistaken the imagination for reality and then complained that reality is stressful. But the mystic, the one who sees through the illusion, plays with delight. He pays his bills. Yes, but as one would pay a toll to cross a bridge built by other dreamers. He wears his mask, but he knows it's papier-mâché. He bows to the king, but inside he laughs, for he knows that the crown is cardboard and the king is his own reflection. To call society a game is not to belittle it, it's to restore its proper charm. For the only way to play well is to know that you're playing. You can be a magnificent doctor, artist, teacher, trader, whatever role you find yourself in, but do it like a dancer dancing, not like a prisoner, counting the steps. When you realize this, even the dull routine of daily life becomes luminous. The marketplace is no longer a battlefield of egos. It's a playground of divine disguises. And so, the secret, if there is one, is this: take the game seriously enough to play it skillfully, but not so seriously that you forget to laugh. Because, in the end, the universe itself is a kind of hide and seek. The self hides as a banker, a mother, a beggar, a president, and then pretends to search for meaning. And when it remembers the trick, it laughs. It always laughs. You see, every one of us is playing a role, a marvelous, intricate, often exhausting role in this cosmic theater. We wear our names like costumes, our occupations like makeup. We enter stage left at birth, stumble through a few dramatic acts, bow politely, and exit stage right. Yet, in the midst of all this acting, we have forgotten the most obvious truth. We are not the role, we are the actor. This forgetting is what we call seriousness. The banker believes he truly is a banker, the soldier a soldier, the preacher a preacher. But remove the uniform, the title, the paycheck, and suddenly who are you? Silence, awkwardness, a nervous laugh, because the costume has become the skin, and the actor has mistaken the mask for the face beneath it. You see, this is the root of suffering. We cling to the part, terrified that the play might end, that the curtain might fall, that someone might shout, "You're not really who you think you are." But awakening, in the truest sense, is precisely that moment, the moment you hear the director whisper, "Relax, it's only a play." And when you realize that, you begin to enjoy it. The tension dissolves. You can still play the banker or the teacher or the father, but now you do it with a light touch, with humor. You no longer act to prove your worth. You act because acting itself is the joy. You're free to laugh at your mistakes, to improvise, to surprise yourself. Life becomes jazz instead of marching band. Now, I'm not suggesting that you quit your job and wander barefoot through the streets shouting, "It's all a play." No, that's just another role, the anti-role. What I'm saying is that you can play the game beautifully, responsibly, even passionately, and yet remember, deep down, that it is a game. You can answer emails, raise children, pay taxes, but do it as a dance, not as a duty imposed upon a frightened little ego. The tragedy of modern man is not that he works, it's that he has forgotten how to play. He thinks he must justify his existence, as though life were some grim audition for divine approval. But the universe never asked you to audition, it simply invited you to the show. And the show, my friends, is already underway. When you see through the role, the player shines through every gesture. You become spontaneous again, creative again, alive again. The actor who remembers he's acting becomes the best kind of performer, relaxed, fluid, unpredictable. He can play the villain or the saint, the fool or the scholar, and behind each face, you can see the same twinkle in the eye, the divine mischief that says, "Ah, yes, this is all quite something, isn't it? This is a created having." So perhaps the secret of spiritual maturity is not to abandon your part, but to play it so wholeheartedly that you can bow out without regret. When you finally drop the mask at the moment of death, or perhaps long before, you'll discover that you were never merely one character at all. You were the whole theater. The stage, the lights, the audience, the applause, all of it made of the same shining awareness that has been pretending to be you. And when that realization dawns, you don't stop playing. You just stop pretending that it's serious. You act, but now you enjoy the act. You become, as I like to say, a genuine fake, the most honest kind of human being. The one who knows he's pretending, and therefore can never be deceived. There comes, sooner or later, a peculiar and rather disorienting moment in one's life, a quiet crack in the pattern, a pause in the machinery of thought, when you suddenly see through it all. The scaffolding of meaning you've been clinging to begins to shimmer, to tremble, and you realize that what you took for stone was only smoke. It may happen while you're washing the dishes, walking to work, or staring at the ceiling at 2 a.m. The mind, for a split second, forgets its lines, and in that gap the truth shines through. You don't really know who you are, and astonishingly, you never did. The roles, the identities, the worries, the successes, the endless self-commentary, all of them were part of a long improvisation. And suddenly the music stops. You find yourself naked, not in the sense of shame, but of utter simplicity. There is no banker, no believer, no enlightened seeker, only awareness, watching itself. And it's funny, really, because the discovery is not solemn at all. It feels like remembering the punchline of a very long joke that you'd forgotten was a joke. You burst out laughing, or perhaps crying, because you see that the whole affair, the entire cosmic business of striving and seeking, was built on the assumption that there was a separate you trying to make sense of it all. But the one who was trying to understand was part of the dream. You might try to put it into words, but words slip away like fish. I saw the truth, you say, and even as you speak, you know it's not quite right. It wasn't something you saw. It was something that saw you. The subject and object vanished in the same breath. And for a moment, however brief you were, what you have always been, this vast, ungraspable presence that cannot be improved, cannot be diminished, and never needed saving. Now, don't misunderstand. This seeing through is not a moral achievement. It's not enlightenment as a prize. It's more like the sudden awareness that you've been clenching your fist for years, and without realizing it, you let go. There's no ceremony, no trumpet blast, just the gentle collapse of pretense. The game is still there, the marketplace still hums, the bills still come, but now you see them as what they are, waves on the surface of an infinite sea. And for a while, this vision can be dizzying. You walk around half in awe, half in disbelief. Everything looks slightly transparent, as though the world has become a painted veil. You smile at strangers for no reason, because you see that the stranger and the you are two masks of the same face. You notice the absurd beauty of existence, that trees are silently dancing, that clouds are performing, that even the traffic jam has its peculiar rhythm. But then, of course, the mind rushes in to claim the discovery. Ah, it says, I have attained awakening. I, the great spiritual person, have transcended the illusion. And just like that, poof, the game starts again, only this time with a spiritual ego in the lead role. So the dance continues until one day, even the idea of seeing through is seen through. You learn, in the end, that this awakening is not something that happens to you, it's what you've been all along. It's not an event in time, but the timeless ground in which all events appear. You can't chase it or hold it. You can only notice that it's already here, patiently waiting behind your eyes, smiling at your seriousness. And once you've seen that, truly seen it, you can't unsee it. You may forget for a while, fall back into the performance, get caught again in the noise of ambition and anxiety. But somewhere deep within you, the laughter lingers. You remember that it's all a play, and that the point of the play was never to win, but to wake up laughing in the middle of it. Now, once you've seen through the play, the first impulse is often to run, to flee the stage entirely. It's as if you've discovered the trick behind a magician's act, and suddenly you want no more illusions. You say, ah, now I see. The world is false. Society is a dream. The marketplace a prison. I shall retire to the mountains and meditate forever. And many have done precisely that, though most discover that the mountains contain just as many illusions as the cities they fled. The thought that you can escape the world is itself another part of the world's game, another costume for the same actor. Because what you call the world isn't something outside you, it's your mind projected in form. You can't run away from it, because you take it with you, like a snail carrying its house on its back. Wherever you go, there you are, as the old saying goes. You may change the scenery, swap the stock exchange for a monastery, the conference room for a cave, but if you are still dividing existence into sacred and profane, you are still trapped in the same pattern. The ego loves this move. It adores being the one who renounced. It loves to be the pure one, the enlightened one, the rebel who has seen through the illusion while everyone else remains asleep. But this is merely another form of pride, subtler, but far stickier. And so the temptation to escape becomes the final trick of the mind. The truth is that awakening is not an exit, it's an embrace. It doesn't pull you away from the marketplace. It shows you that the marketplace was never outside the temple. You don't ascend to heaven, you realize heaven has always been here, hiding in plain sight beneath the noise of the crowd and the clatter of the cash register. The mystic who truly awakens doesn't run from the world. He returns to it with a smile. He buys bread, pays his rent, and nods at the bus driver, but now he does it with a sense of play, of reverence. Every act becomes part of the cosmic rhythm, every exchange a moment of communion. The false mystic escapes responsibility. The true one dissolves the division between spiritual and ordinary. He sees that the divine does not live in retreat, but in relationship. God, after all, is not somewhere else. He's the cashier, the child, the stranger, the sound of your own laughter echoing off the walls of time. You see, When people ask me whether they should abandon the world for the spiritual path, I tell them that the real challenge is far more daring. It's not to withdraw from the noise, but to hear the silence within the noise, to find the still point in the turning wheel, and to live from that center even as the wheel continues to spin. If you can discover this, then the escape you longed for happens naturally. But it's not an escape from the world, it's an escape from the illusion of separation. You find that the world doesn't need fixing, that life doesn't need to be purified, it simply needs to be seen as what it is, the universe pretending to be busy, pretending to be important, while secretly winking at itself. And so, instead of retreating, you return to the ordinary, to the laughter, to the noise, to the mess. But now, with eyes that see clearly, you become like the man in the Zen story who, after enlightenment, chops wood and carries water, just as before. The difference is that now he knows who's chopping and who's carrying, and that there was never any who at all. So don't fall for the temptation to escape. The point of seeing through the play isn't to leave the theater, but to enjoy the performance, knowing it's a performance. For only when you stop trying to get out of life do you finally fall in love with it. There is, you see, a kind of music running through everything, the pulse of existence itself. It hums beneath our thoughts, beneath our duties, beneath even our ideas of right and wrong. It's the rhythm of doing and being, action and stillness, sound and silence. And the funny thing is, we spend most of our lives trying to choose one over the other, as though life could ever be only inhaling without exhaling. Modern man loves to do. He is addicted to movement, to improvement, to progress. He must always be going somewhere, anywhere but here. He works to rest, rests to work, and calls that balance. And then, when he is utterly exhausted, he seeks a guru to teach him how to be, how to stop, how to breathe, how to exist without running away. But doing and being are not enemies. They are two sides of one dance, the forward and backward swing of a pendulum, the sound and the space that make music possible. If you try to live only in one, you destroy the rhythm. To do without being is to become mechanical. To be without doing is to become stagnant. The art of life is not choosing but dancing, moving gracefully between the two without clinging to either. When you sit still in meditation, that is being. When you rise to make tea, that is doing. But the tea itself, the pouring, the warmth of the cup, the steam rising, that is where being and doing meet. That's the middle of the dance, where the distinction dissolves. You're not making the tea. The universe is pouring itself into a cup through your hands. You see, this is what the Taoists meant by Wu Wei, action through non-action, or more poetically, effortless doing. It's not laziness or passivity, it's intelligence in motion. It's when you drive a car without thinking of every turn of the wheel, or play an instrument without counting each note. You're fully participating, yet not forcing. You're in flow, what the modern psychologist calls optimal experience, but what the sage simply calls life as it is. But here's the trap. As soon as you say, I will now practice effortless action, you've ruined it. You're trying to do non-doing, like trying to relax by effort. The trick is to let the dance dance itself. The more you trust it, the more gracefully it moves through you. For instance, the heart doesn't try to beat, it just beats. The tree doesn't strain to grow, it simply unfolds toward the light. The ocean doesn't struggle to make waves, it is the waves. And in the same way, you don't have to force your life, you are your life. Just as a wave is the movement of the sea. The mind loves to pretend that it's in charge, that it must decide when to breathe, when to speak, when to act. But look closely, and you'll see that most of your living happens by itself. You don't do growing hair, you don't do digesting lunch, you don't do falling asleep. These things just happen. The same intelligence that spins galaxies, spins you. And when you begin to sense this, not as a belief, but as a living fact, a marvelous thing occurs. The anxiety of control melts away. You discover that you can work without strain, love without fear, and live without effort. Life becomes, as I like to say, automatic but not mechanical. You move like a dancer who has forgotten the steps but somehow never misses the beat. So, the dance of doing and being is not something you achieve. It's what you are when you stop interfering. The river doesn't need coaching to flow downhill. The moon doesn't need encouragement to shine. And you, in your most natural state, are no different. You do what needs doing, you rest when rest arises, and both are perfect expressions of the same music. To live like this is to rediscover innocence, to become once again like the child who builds a sandcastle and then laughs as the tide takes it away. He doesn't call it success or failure, he calls it play. And that, you see, is the secret rhythm of the awakened life. To act as though everything matters, while knowing deep down that nothing does, and to let that paradox fill your days with effortless joy. Ah, yes, money. That marvelous invention which, though entirely imaginary, governs the mood of entire civilizations. We talk about it as if it were as real as gravity. Yet if you hold a dollar bill in your hand and look closely, you will find nothing but symbols, ink on cloth, whispers of collective belief. But what power it has! Men and women wake early, toil late, and even kill or die for it all, for a beautiful illusion we all agreed to believe. You see, money is the purest form of game token, a symbol of energy, of exchange, of trust. In its essence, it is innocent. But once we forget that it's a game, once we start believing that our tokens are life itself, we become its servants. We stop living for experience and begin existing for numbers. And that, my friends, is how the tail begins to wag the dog. We say, I earn a living, as if life were something purchased by the hour. Yet what you are truly spending is not time, but yourself. You sell your mornings for security, your afternoons for comfort, and your evenings for entertainment, and then wonder why you feel impoverished, even when your account is full. Desire, too, follows the same joke. We think we chase satisfaction, but satisfaction was never designed to be caught. Like a carrot tied to the donkey's back, it moves exactly as fast as you do. The more you strive, the farther it runs. Because the wanting mind is a machine that feeds on itself. Its very purpose is to keep wanting. But here's the cosmic twist. There is nothing wrong with desire. It's the movement of life itself, the wave curling toward the shore. The problem begins when we confuse the wave with the ocean, when we take the impulse of play and chain it to the illusion of control. We imagine we can manage life as we manage our bank accounts, and end up anxious because existence refuses to balance according to our bookkeeping. Now, control, that's the grandest joke of all. You think you are in charge of your life, that you are the CEO of Me Incorporated. But look closely. You didn't plan your birth, your heartbeat, your next thought, or even the next word that comes out of your mouth. They arise spontaneously, as clouds form in the sky. You don't control life. You are life, pretending to be a controller. It's like a wave insisting it's steering the ocean. How absurd, and yet how very human. Once you see this, the whole struggle relaxes. You stop clutching your money as though it could save you from impermanence. You stop treating desire as a disease to be cured or a god to be worshipped. You begin to see them both as dances, energies moving through you, neither good nor bad, simply expressive of the grand play of existence. When you realize this, you can still use money, but playfully. You earn, you spend, you give, you receive, but the weight of it all lifts. You know it's a kind of ritual, not salvation. You desire, You enjoy. You lose. You grieve. But you no longer mistake the ripples for the sea. And then, astonishingly, abundance appears. Not because you've mastered manifestation or learned some secret law of attraction, but because you stopped fighting the flow. When you are not possessed by your possessions, life begins to provide exactly what is needed, no more, no less. You find freedom not in owning everything, but in being owned by nothing. The real wealth, you see, is the capacity to play, to engage fully with the world, knowing it's made of dream stuff. When you laugh at the illusion of control, you join the laughter of the gods. And what greater fortune could there be than that? One of the trickiest illusions we face, you see, is the illusion of other people. We believe there are separate beings walking around, each sealed inside their skin, each with private thoughts and private destinies. But that, too, is part of the masquerade. Because when you look deeply into another's eyes, truly look, not as a function, not as a role, you will find the same mystery that looks through your own. Yet, in our marketplace world, most relationships are between roles, not between realities. The husband and wife relate as husband and wife, not as two living beings. The boss and employee, the teacher and student, the parent and child, these are masks conversing with masks. We think we love, but often we only love the reflection of ourselves that another happens to provide. It's not that these roles are wrong. They're necessary costumes in the great play of life. But the tragedy begins when we forget they are costumes. When we believe the marriage contract or the job title is the entire story, we suffocate the spirit that was meant to play them. The mask becomes a prison. And so, awakening changes how you relate. You begin to sense that you are not talking to others, but through them. Every word, every gesture, every argument even, is the universe in dialogue with itself. The quarrel between lovers is thunder meeting lightning. The reconciliation is the calm that follows. You see, it's all one movement, one pulse of being taking 1,000 shapes. But those who have not seen this may find your new way of relating confusing, even threatening. They are still playing the game of identity, and they expect you to play along. They will say, be serious, be normal, be who you were. But you can't. The old costume doesn't fit anymore. Yet neither can you discard it altogether, for the play must go on. And here lies the art, to speak both languages at once, the language of the marketplace and the language of the mystic. You smile, you listen, you play your social roles, but inside you know it's the dance of masks. You can say good morning and mean I love you. You can answer an email and know it is the divine exchanging notes with itself. Compassion grows from this understanding. For when you see that others are still lost in their roles, you no longer judge them, you recognize yourself in their confusion. You once played those same parts with full conviction. So instead of arrogance, you feel tenderness. Instead of correcting them, you let them play, knowing that when the time is right, the mask will slip on its own. And what is love, then, in this light? It is not clinging, nor rescuing, nor possessing. It is the spontaneous recognition of yourself in another form. It is the joy of meeting your own face under a different disguise. To truly love is to let the other be exactly what they are, to give them space to unfold in their own rhythm, as you are unfolding in yours. So, relationships after awakening are not about holding on. They are about holding open. You offer presence instead of performance, truth instead of flattery, silence instead of noise. You listen, not to respond, but to hear the universe speaking through a human mouth. And when you can do this, you discover something remarkable. Even the smallest interactions, the smile at a cashier, the conversation with a stranger, the quiet glance across a crowded room become holy. You see divinity everywhere, not as a belief, but as a direct perception. Every connection becomes communion. You stop searching for perfect people. because you realize the perfection was never in the people, it was in the seeing. And when you see from that stillness, even imperfection becomes a kind of beauty, the divine playing at limitation. So, you see, we do not lose relationships when we awaken. We lose only the illusions that prevented us from truly relating. And what comes in their place is something infinitely more real, not attachment, not performance, but presence. To meet another without pretense, without purpose, without fear, that is the beginning of love as the universe knows it. And in that recognition, loneliness evaporates, for you discover that there was never anyone else to begin with. Now, after all these wanderings through illusion and awakening, there comes the great reconciliation, the moment when the mystic and the merchant shake hands and realize they were never separate at all. Because you see, there's no real need to choose between the monastery and the marketplace. Both are rooms in the same divine house. The spiritual life and the ordinary life, they're not opposites. They're two eyes of one vision. The left eye sees the details, the deadlines, the bills. The right eye sees eternity shimmering behind it all. Only when you open both together does the world come into focus. So the task of integration is not to abandon the world, but to see through it while living fully within it. To drive your car, pay your rent, raise your children, and still know deep in your bones that the whole thing is a cosmic ballet. That's the art of awakening matured. When you live like this, nothing is excluded. You can be utterly ordinary and utterly divine. You can sweep the floor and know that you are sweeping the universe. You can answer a phone call, sign a contract, or even argue over dinner. And somewhere behind it all, you can hear the laughter of God, pretending to be you for a while. To integrate is to allow the sacred to shine through the profane, to see that there never was a line between them. Every desk is an altar, every meal a sacrament, every breath a prayer. The mystic doesn't float above the crowd. He walks through it with his eyes open. The real enlightenment is not about glowing halos and endless calm. It's about being so utterly present that even chaos begins to dance in rhythm. In this way, work becomes meditation. You may still have a boss, still have deadlines, but you no longer work for them. You work with the same energy that turns the stars. You do what is needed, and then you let go, the way a musician strikes a note and lets it fade. The results belong to the universe, not to you. And strangely enough, when you live this way, life begins to cooperate. Not because you've learned to manipulate reality, but because you've stopped resisting it. When you stop insisting that things must go your way, you discover that the way the Tao was carrying you all along. The river was always flowing. You simply stopped thrashing and started floating. Even your so-called problems become part of the play. You can suffer, yes, but you don't identify with the suffering. It moves through you like weather clouds passing across the infinite sky of awareness. And so, you can meet the storms of life with humor, because you know they cannot drown you. You were never the boat. You were the ocean itself. And then, something marvelous happens. Your presence, without trying, begins to change things around you. People feel calmer near you, though you never told them to meditate. Conversations soften, tensions ease. Because when you stop playing the game of fear and control, others sense the permission to drop their masks, too. You don't preach, you simply are. And that being teaches more than 1,000 sermons. This is what I mean by the mystic in the marketplace. Not a person apart from the world, but one fully immersed, yet utterly free. Someone who buys and sells, laughs and cries, wins and loses, but all the while knows it's one vast cosmic improvisation. And that's the joke, really. Once you see the divine in everything, you can't separate yourself from anything. You find God in the laughter of your children, in the hiss of a coffee machine, in the sigh of your own fatigue. You realize that nothing was ever outside the temple. The temple was simply your awareness all along. So go on then. Return to your office, your studio, your kitchen, your city streets. Don't look for enlightenment there. Bring it. Bring your seeing, your stillness, your playfulness. Let every ordinary act be a gesture of reverence. And you'll discover that the mystic and the merchant were never two different people, but one consciousness dancing between silence and sound. And when you live like that, even the most mundane moment becomes sacred. You no longer seek heaven above or peace elsewhere. You find it here in the hum of the world, in the pulse of your own being. And so, after all our searching, our meditating, our striving to understand, there comes a quiet return, a coming home to what was here before the journey began. And the curious thing is, when you arrive, you find there is no one left to arrive. The seeker has dissolved, the knower has vanished. And what remains is simple awareness, laughing softly at the cosmic chase it played with itself. For you see, enlightenment isn't becoming somebody special. It's the discovery that you were never anybody in particular. You were the dance itself, pretending to be a dancer. You were the ocean, imagining itself as a wave rushing to reach the shore, only to realize it was already home all along. When the mystic returns to the marketplace, he does not return as a saint or a prophet. He returns as nobody, which is to say, as everybody. He walks, eats, works, and sleeps just like anyone else. But there's a lightness now, a kind of transparency to his being. He no longer clings to opinions or identities, no longer takes his reflection in the mirror so seriously. He's free, not because he owns the truth, but because he no longer needs to. And this, I think, is the gentlest paradox of awakening, that when you finally stop trying to be divine, you discover you always were. When you cease to insist on being someone, life rushes in, vivid and complete. The sky, the birds, the laughter of strangers, all of it is suddenly intimate, as if existence were leaning close to whisper, "Welcome home." It's funny, really. The moment you stop looking for meaning, everything becomes meaningful. The moment you let go of control, everything begins to move perfectly on its own. The moment you stop seeking God, you find him in the cat stretching in the sunlight, in the wind brushing through a tree, in the breath rising and falling within your chest. And so, the awakened man lives simply. He may still have plans, but they no longer possess him. He may still experience sorrow, but sorrow no longer defines him. He moves through joy and pain as clouds drift across the sky without resistance, without clinging. He doesn't need to prove or preach, because truth is not a doctrine. It's the way the world looks when you're not trying to improve it. People often imagine that enlightenment means detachment, a sort of cold indifference. But it's quite the opposite. When you stop being somebody, you become intimate with everything. You can finally love without fear, because there is no one left to protect. You can finally serve without pride, because there is no one left to glorify. You can finally rest, because there is nowhere left to go. And in that rest, in that profound ordinariness, life reveals its quiet splendor. The morning sunlight on the floor, the smell of rain, the sound of laughter from another room, all of it becomes the voice of the divine, saying, "This is it." There's no fanfare, no fireworks, no cosmic diploma, just this breathing, seeing, hearing, being. That's the whole of it. The mystic's final realization is not that he has ascended somewhere high above the human world, but that the human world was heaven all along, only seen through unclouded eyes. So he smiles, this nobody in particular. He goes about his day, he pays his bills, waters the plants, chats with a neighbor. And though outwardly nothing has changed, inwardly everything has. The weight is gone. The struggle is gone. Even the desire to awaken has dissolved. Because awakening is no longer an achievement, it's the natural state of simply being alive. And in that simplicity, something beautiful happens. You begin to laugh again, not because everything is perfect, but because perfection was never the point. You laugh at the drama, the confusion, the earnest seriousness of the world, and you love it all the more for its absurdity. You see the divine comedy of existence, that God is forever playing hide and seek with himself, and you were both the hider and the seeker the whole time. So here we are, back where we started, but seeing it for the first time. No longer striving to be spiritual, no longer resisting being human, just this life in all its messy, radiant glory. The final freedom is not escaping the world, but seeing that there was never a cage to begin with. And perhaps when you've understood this, when the laughter has finally settled into stillness, you'll find you no longer ask, "Who am I?" You'll look around at the trees, the sky, the faces passing by, and you'll smile because now you know you are all of it and none of it, and that's perfectly all right.